Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Betty May. I'm from the Office of Graduate Education and Life. Glad to see you here. I know there have been more people who signed up for this workshop, so we'll just let them get on at their convenience, but we will start right now. It is noon. We're so happy to have Dr. Paul Speaker here this afternoon with us. Um, he is the professor of finance at the College of John Chambers College of Business and Economics. Uh, Before I turn the time over to him, I would like to share with you a few announcements. And here we go. All right. So this is the lecture for today, the workshop. And I will let Dr. Speaker introduce himself a little later on to you. So right now, okay, let me maximize that. I would like for students to please note if you haven't read any upcoming event news yet. Here's a list. We would like for you to sign or register for these events. The Campus Read Pizza Night is next Thursday evening from 6 to 8. It'll be in the Mountain Lair Road Dungeon Room. And the information should have been out in our newsletter, in our weekly newsletter, and also on our website. So go ahead and sign. We would like for you to come and just enjoy an evening of pizza and just meeting your peers. You don't have to have read the book before you come. Just come because there are interesting topics that relates to graduate school in this book. So that's why we want to take the opportunity to get to know our students and to really have you there to discuss these topics. The second event will be on Friday, November 3rd. It will be a noon event and it will be on Zoom. It is the 3MT competition informational session. The 3MT competition will be in the spring, but we'll be starting to share information with you this semester, and also early next semester, we will have another informational session. So if you have heard about the 3MT, but not sure if you're eligible to compete or what it's about, please come and please share this information with other doctoral students who may be ready to share their dissertation research with the general public. And then the week of November 6th, it will be the National First Generation Student Celebration Week. We will have a panel discussion that week as well. Watch for more details to come later. And then finally, the semester, on Thanksgiving Day, if you or anyone, any students that you know who are staying in town, our office will be paying for a Thanksgiving meal. Again, watch for that detail to come very soon and sign up, and please share that info. And then I'm going to stop sharing now and just to say we will have a very brief evaluation form for you to fill out, and we would appreciate it. And I'm sure our presenter will appreciate seeing feedback about today's workshop. We'll put the link and I'll put the QR code out at the end. It really literally would not take you more than 2 minutes to complete the form. So please kindly complete the form before you leave this session. All right, enough from me. Dr. Speaker, please take over.
Okay, well, thank you, Betty. I appreciate that. Just very, very brief introduction of myself to you. I've been at WVU longer than most. So this is my 43rd year here at the university. Originally in the Department of Economics. My PhD is in economics. I'm a undergraduate degree from LaSalle College in Philadelphia, and did my graduate work at Purdue University with both my master's and my PhD. Came here in 1981, and so been here since. I've been able to move without moving, which is kind of a luxury here. All my early research was in banking, and I ended up, after 6 years in economics, moved over to the finance department, where that research was a little bit more specific to finance. And turns out they pay you twice as much in finance as they do in economics. So not a bad move on my part. So let me jump into this, and I would welcome questions at any point along the way. Feel free if you've got something that you wanted to ask or some refinement. I'm very, very informal what we're going to go through here. I do have the materials I'm going to show to you will be available to you afterwards. So I've got a couple different things, the slides themselves, and again, it's just a few slides, but it has links to some very helpful material. And there is an Excel workbook that goes with this that I encourage you to spend a little bit of time with. So let's go ahead and jump in. I'll go to my and share my information right now. Okay, so this I refer to this as the $1 million lecture. So let me just explain that. By spending this hour on this, we're going to give you enough that you should certainly have at least $1 million more when you retire than you did before this hour. Okay, so the $1 million lecture, a very easy one to be able to fit in place. And this presentation actually stems out of a presentation that I've been doing for the doctoral students in medicine, where quite a few people, while they're grad students, are really kind of struggling with what they have, but also what they're thinking about for the future, to be able to talk about both of those things. So we'll give you a little bit about each of these. I'm going to jump between this and some material that I have together in Excel to be able to demonstrate, but hopefully it will offer you something of value here as you go through. Okay, so let me go to the information. So here are the things that you want to be aware of, not only now, but in the future. So where are the resources that you have? Where are they going? Too frequently, we're not really aware of all of the little things that we do. And when you begin to look at that, you may be able to find, some opportunities for yourself that weren't quite as evident before. So to get to that, the first thing we wanted to talk about is goal setting. And this is your immediate goals as well as your long-term goals. The second thing is, well, how do you build the budget? To be able to manage limited funds, and everybody has limited funds. I have limited funds. I probably can do a lot more than any graduate student might be able to, but I still have to make choices. So to do that, you need to think about what it is you want to accomplish, not just the impulse of the moment, but to really kind of think and plan some things out. And it doesn't mean you can't have impulsive expenditures. That certainly is possible, but that's part of what you build in. Talk a little bit about resources that are out there that can help you. Fortunately, when you get to personal financial planning, there's a lot of very good material out there. So I'll have links to quite a few of these things from the Federal Reserve in Dallas. So we're hearing a lot about this week. If you watch any financial news about the Federal Reserve, what's going to happen? Are they going to raise interest rates again? What does that mean to everybody? But the Federal Reserve also does a lot of different things. So there are 12 Federal Reserve banks located throughout the country to really get what is a sense of the local business, industry, services, and so on, and the attitudes in any region of the country. So the Dallas Federal Reserve Bank, what they do, one of their specialties is personal financial planning. They put great resources out there. So we want to highlight some of those as well as some other things here. I have one of the tools that I'm going to be providing is a 30-day spending tracker. This takes a little bit of discipline. For 30 days, you're going to mark down every penny you spend or that is spent on your behalf. So if graduate education and life provide you with a meal one evening, you want to mark that in there because it's a meal that you've had. Okay? if you go out on a date, whatever it might be, if you are living in friends or families' homes where you're not paying rent, well, money was spent on your behalf. So we want to track that. And then we want to take a look at this, what happens after graduate school. So a number of different things that we want to accomplish here. So let's start with goal setting. Now, the material, and I've provided a little bit more detail on all these things in goal setting. It's originally something that came from the website CNN Money. And it's one that's no longer active. So you have to know kind of the hidden URL to be able to get there. But it's really very, very helpful. And just kind of talking about the idea of goal setting. And this is short-term and long-term goals. So the things they talk about is focus, narrow what those objectives are to be able to get down to some things where you can really concentrate on this. Of all the goals that you have, what are the most important? Finding a way to prioritize and build around those. And no matter what plan is, the Mike Tyson quote that everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And so that's kind of a thing that you find frequently. You can make plans and it's going to be some deviation. So what happens when there are conflicts? What happens when this goal and this goal conflict? And that happens to all of us all the time. Unless you have unlimited resources, doing one thing means you're not doing something else. So in economics, we refer to it as an opportunity cost. And so there are going to be conflicts. Put time on your side, okay? You don't have to get everything done today. And part of it is to kind of work your way through, but where time works best for you, by paying attention to these at the beginning of your career or before your career actually begins, you will be setting things aside that are going to make your choices so much greater later on in life. So when, we'll talk about retirement, and retirement doesn't mean stop working necessarily. It just means having choice. So don't let this blonde hair fool you. As I said, I've been, at WVU as a faculty member for 43 years. I've got choice. I might be working, but I'm in retirement in that sense, that I'm choosing to do everything that I have. I've got all that I need. If I stopped work tomorrow, I would not suffer in the least. And it's nice to be able to have choice. Plus, anybody that goes into this profession, one of the things people don't necessarily realize is that college faculty are the second longest live group there is of any profession you can have. The only group that lives longer on average are Catholic nuns. So unless you want to become a nun, anybody that's looking at a career in academics, there are some extreme benefits there, and long life is a big piece of that. Choose amongst your options pretty carefully. I mean, really think of what the repercussions are going to be, and don't do it alone. Talk to people. So if you currently have your own family, if you're married or a significant other or have children, it's good to talk to what your goals are with everybody, what you're trying to accomplish. Now, I come from a large family. I have 5 brothers. And in my own family, I've got 3 children and 5 grandchildren at this point. And everybody has a pretty good sense of what my plans are, what I'm trying to do. And it's helpful to kind of talk about those things. Start now, no time like the present. I mean, really begin to think about what these things are. And it doesn't hurt to write things down. Look at them later. You may modify. You probably will modify. But write them down. It's a lot easier to commit some things. When you look at all your plans, we say sweat the big stuff and don't sweat the small stuff. So really think what really matters. And a lot of that is you need to know yourself. And ultimately, even though you set a plan, it's like strategy in any setting that you're ever going to have, be prepared to change. Things change, priorities change, interests are going to change. So don't be worried about that. But it's a good place to start. Now, budgeting, on the other hand, we'll take a look at here. There's some great material at the Dallas Federal Reserve. So FED, Fed is the Federal Reserve System. Just how to budget, how to go through this. They do a great job. Now, I'm going to introduce you to a tool to track your own personal spending, to become fully aware of yourself, to look at what happens after graduation, and look at cost of living comparisons here. So to do this, I'm going to jump into an Excel workbook here. So bear with me while I bring this up. Okay. So this is a tool that I use, and I've sent to the grad office to be able to share a copy with you. But there are several different tabs in here. But the first thing we do is we, just put your name in so that you know it's you. So there's me. And then it reappears then on every page. So as you're looking through with this, how old are you now? So I'm not going to give my actual age because that's not going to do very good here in the demonstration. But let's suppose I'm 25 years old and looking ahead to my future. Expected retirement age. It's very important when planning that you plan for something, just not retirement whenever it happens. You're not stuck to this age, but what is it that you anticipate? So some of the things that you might have heard is, Social Security. And in the United States, Social Security, you can begin taking it currently at the age of 62. But it's not until a later age that you hit what they refer to as full retirement age. So that is varying right now. What we would expect to see, though, in many of our models is that most people are going to be working until the age of 70. That's becoming much more normal in terms of what that horizon is going to be. Remember, Social Security started with a retirement age of 65 when expected lifespan was 67. Now, expected lifespan of the college educated, 83 and a half. So keep that in mind that what you're going to be doing is going to generally be happening longer. But put these things in, these are going to trigger different events in this tool. Now, first thing you want to know is, well, how long are you going to live? So there's a tab in here called Living to 100. Now, this is a great one to take a look at. This is a research project out of Boston asking the question, why do people live to 100? What do they do differently? So before we started this session, Betty and I were really talking a little bit about research into aging. And this is a good one. Do your own research into aging. Now, the quiz itself is one that you can repeat over time. You can go back to it and see, if you've made changes in your life, how they're going to be affected. But what are you planning for? So I went in, did my test several years ago, and it suggested I would live to 102.3. Okay, so I'm planning for it. I'm hoping to be there. I say this knowing that my mother is still alive and lives by herself and is healthy as a horse. So I expect to get more of the same. They're going to ask you 40 questions. They're very personal, but it's only for you to share with you. So nobody else wants to know those details. The more you know about yourself, the better the results are going to be. So things like, do you know your blood pressure? Very important to have those. Do you know family history? Who has had heart issues or who has had cancer show up in their lifetimes? The more you know, the better. Do you know things like your cholesterol numbers? All of these things will improve what you're going to get back in terms of the results. If you don't know those, it'll just treat you as average in those categories. But the more you know, the better. Now, after you answer the 40 questions, it's going to come back and give you a life expectancy. So it might say, well, you're the average college age person, 83 and a half. Okay, whatever it is. But then it's going to give you some detail about yourself and some suggestions that would expand your lifetime. These are great, and they may be very simple. And so these are good things. I have my students do this and write these down, but things like, begin flossing my teeth daily, this should add 1.5 years to my lifetime. Now, people may scoff at that. Flossing is going to add 1.5 years. Yes, because floss, avoid gum disease. You get gum disease, it gets into your bloodstream, it can affect your heart. So things like that, but it's going to add. And you want to look at various things that you might do. Cut back my alcohol consumption. Which should add 3.5 years to my lifetime. Okay, so it'll suggest things for you in there. And then it may have other things, exercise daily for 50 minutes and add 2 years. So you put all those things together and you say, wow, okay, well, I could add 7 years to my lifespan. So not 83.5 if I can make these changes. Now 90.5 is what I would anticipate. Now, you do all of these things and it's going to feed into a result at the very end that we want to see. The next one is just your financial goals. And I always say, write these down. This is just a sheet to say, these are my next 5 years, what I want to accomplish. This is what I want to accomplish over 25 years in here. And oftentimes they may be related to this. So, personal health, personal concern. Okay, so what is a financial goal? Well, if I can add 7 years, I'm going to need to fund those 7 years. So look at what those things might be and write them down for yourself. It's very, very helpful to meet goals if you have set some kind of standard for yourself. Now, the very next tab is asking you about when you leave university. What are you going to do? So it asks you the very simple question, and you'll notice by putting my name on the first page, it keeps popping up here. So what's the job title you're going to have after graduation? Well, okay, maybe you want to be an academic researcher, okay, whatever it might be, in finance and whatever your discipline is. Where are you going to do this? So do you have an objective as to where it's going to be? Okay, and so just kind of think about this a little bit. Maybe it's here in Morgantown. And then what do you expect to earn? Now, this is a monthly budget. So if you look at the tab just for a month, so what do I expect as an academic researcher? Well, don't get overly jealous, but they do pay finance people more. Our job is to predict the future. So a starting monthly salary for a finance professor is somewhere around $20,000. Okay. So based on that, what you want to do you have other sources of income? Just figure out what's it going to cost you for a mortgage or to rent each place. What are your credit cards? Do you have student loans they have to pay off? What are all of these things? Taxes. This is a big eye opener for most people before they've had that full-time job that's really paying well, to realize how large their taxes are going to be on this. Look these things up. So there are very, very simple places to get this information. So if I'm looking at West Virginia, I would go to something like smartmoney.com and say, hey, what would the taxes be for somebody making $20,000 in Morgantown, West Virginia? And it'll tell me federal, state, local, Social Security, Medicare, anything else. If there's a local tax, it's got to put all of those things in there. Insurance. Now, I have hidden in here some of the key things. Typically, housing in debt is 30% of your income is going to show up there. Taxes, 25% of your overall income, pre-tax income, is going to end up in there. Insurance, maybe 4%. savings? Are you going to have a supplemental retirement account? Do you have a 401k or an IRA? Fortunately here, we're very well treated at West Virginia University, where we put 6% in and the university matches that. Okay, I tend to put in another 10% as a supplemental savings to be able to deal with that. But think about those things. And what about all of your living expenses? So after you put all of those things in, it'll tell you, it'll begin to subtract these things out. So if I'd said my mortgage is going to be $2,500 a month with this, you'll notice I've only got $17,500 left. But this is just a good first monthly budget to put down, just first impressions. It'll get cleaned up later with things that you have, but federal income tax or all taxes is going to be roughly 25% of this 20,000 is going to go in there, whether it's federal income tax, state, local, all of those things that are going to fit in there. So where's your money going? So good exercise. Now, again, this information I put as this first job, how does that compare to other offers I might have? This is a really important one to think about here. So the next tab, this information kicks over here. It says, okay, if I wanted to be an academic researcher in Morgantown, West Virginia at an annual salary of $240,000, what if I took a job somewhere else? Maybe I wanted to go to New York City. So in New York City, what would the comparable salary be? Or if I said Pittsburgh versus, or Charlotte or some other place. This is a real eye-opener. What would this corresponding thing be? Well, you see this link here to bankrate.com. And bankrate.com has this very convenient calculator to help you. So all I would have to do is to say, well, let's look at Morgantown, West Virginia. And these cities are arranged by states. So I can just go down to West Virginia and find Morgantown. There we are. There's Morgantown. And if I'm moving to New York City, scroll down to New York. Okay, and we'll deal with this in Manhattan, and I wanted 240,000. Okay, so 240 sounded like a lot. Comparable earnings in New York, I would need to earn $602,000 for the same lifestyle as 240 here. It's a very, very important site because you're going to be looking at possible places that you're going to be. And you get even more detailed down below. It'll tell you what individual items cost. Morgantown versus Manhattan. I always have people take a good look at this housing cost. So if I bought a house in Morgantown for $374,150, that would be almost $2.6 million in the city. Or if I'm renting an apartment at $920 in Morgantown, it would be $4,773 in New York. So a very good website to go to take a look at these. And I always have people look at 4 or 5 different cities, mark the rents down so they're making good informed decisions. Okay. Now, another important aspect, though, both now and in your future, is your tolerance for risk. So the next tab is risk tolerance. Now, what the risk tolerance does is it asks you 13 questions. And it's going to be an assessment. This is actually the national standard for this. So the University of Missouri runs this in a lot of different ways and collects data. So you can always go straight to them and fill that out for them to learn. But these are just drop-down menus. So in general, how would your best friend describe you as a risk taker? Just a drop-down menu. And they might say, well, he's cautious. You are a TV game show and you can choose which of the following. What prize would you take? Okay. Are you going for it? Did you buy a Powerball ticket? And then you might be saying, well, I'll go with D, whatever it might be. But this will accumulate down here for, each of these as you as you get, make some choices and choose every one of these and so on, it's going to give an assessment. So here it says, well, with only answering a few of these, I'm a conservative investor with low risk tolerance. You may be a high investor, but know yourself. And I tease people about this. My two best friends, both have talked to me about their own financial futures. And, I'd given them a different test, but on a scale to 100, how tolerant of risk are you? Well, my friend Jess, he took it and he was a 92 out of 100, willing to take on all kinds of risk. But his sister Maria, very, very conservative with this. She was an 8 out of 100. So it's very important to know yourself because that dictates how you're going to invest and what this means about your future. You don't want to be looking at something every day. You don't want to say, oh, how am I doing today? Well, I'm still 40 years away or 50 years away from retirement. You shouldn't be looking quite that closely at on a daily basis, but monthly or quarterly, yeah, that makes sense to pay attention to some things. Now, whatever you would have answered with these, it's going to throw it into a calculator at the end to kind of figure out what would happen if you change certain habits. So I'll just answer a few more of these. Okay. Now, the next tool in here, this is a 30-day spending log. And this number in blue, you can change it to whatever day you started. I put it as today, but it'll change all the other dates. And all you do is you mark in here every penny you spend or is spent on your behalf. So you go to the grocery store and you spend $45.52, then boom, you enter that. You'll notice the total will just keep adding these things up and what you do each day. You paid your water bill, that came in here. You went to Starbucks and you spent $3.50, whatever it would be. Just mark everything in here for each day and it's going to add these things up. And all you do is you just scroll your way through this to the subsequent days. And at the end of those 30 days, you'll have all of these things, various pieces filled out. Perhaps you put, you paid your rent here at the end of the month. Whatever it might be, you enter all of these things in. And what it's going to do then is to take all of these pieces of information and combine them. How long are you going to live? What age are you now? What age are you going to retire? Okay. How are you spending your money right now? And it has one that says potential savings. So as you fill these out, be realistic. I mean, what is it that you can actually do? And what would you commit to this? So for example, eating out, maybe I say, well, okay, I could have saved $1.89. Okay. And instead of going to Starbucks, I stop at Sheetz and get a coffee, whatever it might be. As soon as you choose an action, it's going to take all of your other information and say, well, how much additional money would you have in retirement if you did this every month? How much more money could you spend every month in retirement because you chose this change in your lifestyle? And it doesn't have to be dramatic. Maybe stop buying Diet Cokes out of a vending machine. It could be, again, where do you get this? But as soon as you put it in, wow, cutting out and going to Sheetz instead to get my coffee, saving $1.89 a month is all. Given my risk posture, I would have an additional $16,600 in my retirement account, which means given the lifespan I had, I could spend an extra $153.80 each month in retirement. And if you have other things that you might be able to do along the way, and again, you want to think of changes that you can make permanently here. It'll kick it in by taking all of your information. So I encourage you, take advantage of this tool. Okay, we do have that available for you. and you learn a bit about yourself. Okay. Now, what other things do we have in mind here? What do you do with the extra? Okay. And at some point, you might not feel like there's much extra now, but where do you put it? One of the things that I highly encourage for every student, get a Roth IRA started if you can do this. Now, if you're not familiar with a Roth, the beauty of a Roth is, yes, you take post-tax money, but you're a student now. Okay. How much money are you earning? What tax bracket are you in? Most of you are in maybe the 10% tax bracket, if that high. So you've paid your tax, you put it into Roth, your savings. That money and any money it ever earns is never taxed. Never. So think about that. Suppose you just did this for 5 years while you're young. How much money are you going to have? Well, let me just demonstrate this. Just $5,000 a year for 5 years. If you just did that at a very young age. So I've got a little Roth calculator here. So let's suppose that right now you're 23 years old and you put in $5,000 this year. Now, the way the Roth works, you're limited on how much you can put in each year. And you're limited by how much you've earned. So to put 5,000, you would have had to have earned at least 5,000. If you've earned less, you put in less. But if you just did that at age 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27, $5,000, and you never put another penny in, you can, but even if you didn't, no more, let's think of what's going to happen. So a lot depends on, how much risk you're willing to take on for this. Okay, so we can, play with some of these things that we're going to have here, but here's what your balance is going to be. Let's suppose you were low risk tolerance. Okay, so you're going to have your 5,000 at the end of that month is all that you would have, but the next month you're going to start earning interest on it. So you're going to have the prior months multiplied by 1 plus, say, this interest rate that we have there of 3.5%, and that's what a low risk tolerance would be, plus whatever you put in this month. So we'll add to that the 5,000 earned this month. So great, you'd have 10,175. After the next month, put in another 5,000. You're earning interest on the prior payments, and it gets a little bit bigger. So you'd have 26, after putting 25,000 in, you would have 26,812. Now, you never put another penny in. What's going to happen to this? Okay. Well, let's go all the way out to, say, age 70 when you retire. You only entered 100 and or only entered 5 payments of 5,000, you have 117,698. But that's when you only put in at a very low risk tolerance. Somebody who was just moderate instead. If you looked at somebody like this, where instead of this amount here, instead what they were doing was just doing average, say like the S&P 500. Well, that person would find at retirement that theirs would have grown much larger. They would have almost $1.5 million just investing at an average level, buying the index fund, buying the S&P 500. 25,000 giving you $1.5 million. And if your riskiness was a higher level, say as much as 11%, say small cap stocks, okay, well, it gets even bigger as to what this could be. So you look at somebody like that, how would theirs grow? $2.7 million. So consider starting a Roth. And if it's more modest than that, okay, easy to be able to figure these out. And if you keep it going, now this is one of the great benefits that we have here at West Virginia University is, as a faculty member, I make too much money to be able to invest in a Roth. Okay, directly as a Roth IRA. But we have supplemental retirement accounts here that I can voluntarily put much more money in. And being above a certain age, I can put even more in. So I take 10% of my income and put it into a Roth 401k investment, one that I never have mandatory withdrawals as I get older, and I will never pay taxes on it again. Pay tax on the money going in, everything that it earns is tax-free. So if you do anything for yourself at a young age, put something aside into a Roth. If you can't afford $5,000, put in what you can, but get it started. So these are always the students I pat on the back in my own classes, the ones that come in and have somehow been able to start a Roth. And a Roth IRA is a tremendous thing. So think about doing that. Okay, now resources that I would point you to be able to look at some of these things. Okay, we saw the Living to 100, and again, the graduate office has these to be able to share with you. So just click on the link. So Living to 100, ask yourself that question. How long am I going to live? And then immediately as a follow-up here, there's a link to 7 healthy habits to help you live longer. So when you do an examination of yourself, and they're going to ask all kinds of questions, those 40 questions. So they do want to know about your alcohol consumption. They want to know about smoking habits now and in the past. They want to know about your personal health and that of your relatives. Okay? They want to know about your sex life. Okay? And turns out once you're over 50, they don't care about your sex life, but so I don't get asked those questions anymore. But a very important one there that, when I have students do this, I find that many get chastised for unprotected sex. And, of course, I came up through all of the crisis with respect to AIDS, and I'm very respectful of what that means and how that can impact your life. And of course, the sexually transmitted infections, have been on the rise in many locations. So, being able to answer these honestly, because this has an impact on your life. One of the documents I shared was this file on goal setting. It's just a PDF. And again, it's not my creation. This is just information that came from CNN Money. But since it's not an easy link to get to anymore, and I don't know when they're going to cut it off, it really is very, very valuable. I encourage you to do that. And then there are 4 short readings that are posted on the website of the Dallas Federal Reserve Bank. So budgeting. Okay? And if you've not gone through the idea of budgeting, what I started you with here was, just a blank sheet in terms of budgeting. What would a monthly budget look like when you start work? But more typically, we're going to do a budget by simply saying, well, what is it in existence now? And how do I begin to modify, which is what the 30-day spending was doing. So 2 ways to kind of look at a budget. Chapter 3 on that, on saving and investment. So part of it is how to save. Here's a recommendation I make for every one of my students, that when you take your first job, almost every place there's going to be some type of review of your performance. Well, if they tell you it's at 1 year, request that you get it at 6 months. Okay, they're going to be happy that, wow, you want to hear how you're doing after 6 months. The benefit of doing that is frequently that will lead to your first pay increase. Whatever your first job pay increase is, put that into savings, all of it. You've never seen it, you've never spent it, you've never dealt with that, and just make that a permanent part of your savings. I mean, it's a big, big difference if you're doing that early. The 4th chapter on building your credit and controlling your debt. it is so very, very easy. And many that have student loan payments, either from undergraduate or graduate or whatever that might be, to be able to deal with. You want to be able to build up your credit record. That's going to certainly affect things, your ability to borrow when you really need it. You want that first house or that next house if it's not your first. You want to be able to make arrangements perhaps to help your children go to college or to go to private school or whatever it might be. So how do you save and have these things so you have those choices? And keeping debt under control. What is it that you can actually handle? There are a number of standards that are out there as to, how much should you borrow towards a house? And again, as I mentioned, when you're paying towards all loans and credit card types of things, the rule of thumb is, do you want to keep that under 30%, okay, of what your expenditures are? Most of your banking institutions are going to look at what that is for you. So when you look at a house and figure out what those payments are going to be, 30% dedicated towards that is pretty typical. And then finally, how do you protect your wealth? Because we did take risk tolerance, and you might be in someone of above average risk on that, but riskiness just means variability. So a lot of people, the last few years, we found, prior to the pandemic, that annual returns in the market for people's retirements were dramatically high. But what happened during the pandemic, they went down very dramatically. So we've spent this past year really trying to recover and get our way back. So, the S&P 500, so that's like the 500 biggest companies traded in the US, they're up about 15% on this year, but they were down more than that last year, okay, well over 20%. So how do you protect yourself as you get nearer to needing to be able to use the money? And they do a very good job with that. Now, one other suggestion that I make to each and every one of you is think about what your passion is in terms of what you're studying. And, it may not be finance or business in any respect. And I'm sure for most of you it is not. Think about this. If you added up what your earnings will be in your job life, you add all of those things up. If you play this right, your retirement account will hold more than you have earned in a cumulative sense over your lifetime. Think about that. You invest so much in your studies and learning about your expertise. Are you spending a sufficient amount of time looking after your financial health? And it's not something that can wait. So, a couple suggestions for you. I would pick one of these websites that give really good information and just begin to learn on your own. Track a company, see what's happening. So I'm going to show one of these, which is Yahoo Finance. So here's the page. It's just finance.yahoo.com. And it's a financial site. And there's plenty others like it. Wall Street Journal, you could do this. You could go to Morningstar. You could pick CNN Money. I mean, it's all the same information. It's just how they display it. CNBC. So what are they doing here? You want to begin educating yourself. Track some things to see what's going on. So let me just show you a couple things through this page. So you see at the top, this is active right now. So we see the S&P 500. You see that it's at a level 4,352.57. What does that mean? Okay. Well, it's just a combination of all the things that are held in there, and it's a gauge. Okay, it's a number, and it tells you that today it's down $5.67, which is just 0.13%, so slightly down. Most people are more familiar with the Dow 30 industrials, but it's only 30 companies, 30 big companies. S&P much broader with that. Okay, So you see the Dow is down a little bit, but how do these numbers connect? It's the percentage change that you're interested in. You have the NASDAQ. This is an electronic exchange. It's a lot more tech companies are in there. A lot of companies are traded in there in the NASDAQ, including some West Virginia companies. United Bank, MVB Bank are traded in there. You have a very broad index in the Russell 2000. You can see what's happening with crude oil, with gold, silver, exchange rates between the euro and the US dollar. So it's a good time to, this past year to have been in Europe because it's almost trading at par. The Treasury bond, very much in effect today. So this is a lot of the discussion. What is the Federal Reserve doing? And you can see that the yield or the interest rate that they're promising is falling. That's good, because when that's falling, bond prices are rising. But you get all of these things. What is changing? Even going down to Bitcoin, what's it worth on the US dollar? But I would pick a company, somebody that you're interested in is a good way. So do you want here I've got United Bank shares. If you wanted to follow a West Virginia company, or are you interested in Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway? Okay. So, let's suppose it was Berkshire Hathaway that you wanted to follow. All you do is select on those, and you want to try to discover what these things are. Read about these. What is this thing called a beta? Look it up. It's telling you how it is with respect to riskiness. And a number below 1, it's below average risk. So at 0.87, less than, say, the S&P 500 is. So that's good on that in terms of riskiness. This is how it's performed. The graphics are good. Here's what it's done over the year. It's up over the year. What's it done over the last 5 years? What's it done over the maximum data that they have? A lot of good graphics. Information about the companies, statistics, historical prices, insider information. Heck, I follow these things. I've come from a big family. I can find out what my brothers are doing. How much are they paying themselves in their companies? So there's all kinds of things that you have in there. But find a site and begin to look at it. Okay, see, we've got oh, that was the Betty's note. Okay. So the workshop evaluation. So as you go through, educating yourself on any of these items becomes a very important thing for you to be doing as you work your way through. So, if I can help with that, I certainly welcome any of you. If you have questions, send me an email. Okay, I'm easy to find in the university directory. So again, the name is Paul Speaker. So it's paul.speaker@mail.wvu.edu. If you have things that, are more personal to you to ask about that, that's fine. If you're looking at things that you're doing, I'm not going to give you advice, do this or do that, but I will give you options. And a lot of it comes down to knowing yourself and to be able to explore that. And that tool that I went through fairly quickly, it's really very, very helpful. When I first created the 30-day spending so people would learn about themselves, I did it for an online class several years ago, and I was shocked at some of the results that people sent back to me, where they're amazing amounts. But the one that is not surprising is how much your financial behavior is related to your health behavior. So people would find out, oh, they spent this much on tobacco products. Boy, stop smoking, your life goes longer, and you got a lot more money available. Or other people, oh, I'm going to stop buying a round of drinks for my friends on payday. They realized how much they were saving by doing things like that. But it's the little habits. It's what you consume. Are you buying fresh vegetables at the grocery store, or are you simply buying prepared meals? I mean, these things are all interconnected with that. And the more you learn about yourself now, the much better you're going to be as you go through your lifetime. and head towards retirement. And as I said, doesn't mean you stop working. It means you choose what you do. So I choose to do what I'm doing here. I enjoy meeting students, being around younger people. I enjoy the university environment of, heck, we've got this beautiful downtown rec center in my building. I come to the building in the morning, I work out, get cleaned up, and I just go upstairs to my office. You know, it's making me live longer, and it's also affecting my budget and where I spend money and where I don't spend money. So learn about yourself, and I think you can benefit from that. We've got just a couple minutes left. If anybody has any questions, I hadn't seen any pop up through here, but if you do, I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
Yes, students, please take advantage of this opportunity. We have an expert here who could give you some advice.
Oh, you're
So
most welcome for it.
I am going to pop up my PowerPoint. If it is easier for you to do, let's see. All right. If it is easier for you, I have a QR code here for the evaluation. Yeah, scan it on your phone and it will take you right to the same link that I sent you via chat. I'm sure Dr. Speaker would appreciate some feedback from you about this workshop.
Okay, so there's a question in there now. Okay, a couple questions that popped in, so let's see if we can't do it. Let's see. What would you say about index universal life insurance? I don't know if this relates. I don't do a whole lot with insurance in this talk, but I myself kept myself heavily insured. I've got 3 children, my wife and 3 children, and I kept insurance until I had hit goals in terms of the amount that was in my retirement account, until I took care of that. So I think I carried life insurance that grew with inflation, through most of my career, until I hit about $3 million in retirement funds. And then I didn't think that I needed it. Can I have a 403B, a 401k, plus a Roth as a physician? Yes, you can have all kinds of things that are in there. So it depends when you start this. The Roth limits, based on your earnings, when you can contribute to a Roth IRA. And I used to tell people, get one started when you're really young, because even if you can't contribute, the fact that you've had it and it's existed for more than 5 years gives you options. But they changed a lot of that in last year, and they made it much simpler. So I have a 403B through the university that permits me to, actually there's 2 that I can use. So I'm able to put in something over $50,000 a year into that, and they're in the form of a Roth. I mean, you can choose. So that would be the 403B Roth that you would take advantage of, and you can do it. And I encourage it because there are no mandatory withdrawals from a Roth. So it is the last money I will ever spend, and it's all tax-free. So that would be really good. So you can, the question about what insurance grows with inflation. I had a term policy that through TIAA-CREF that I used, and you can get that really from any company. You just simply say, do you want it to be, say, a fixed $1 million or 2 million, whatever you may want, or do you want it something that's indexed to that? So your premiums will go up with it. I think I had started with $1 million flat policy, and it probably grew to 1.7 million just as inflation grew with that. So, but you can find that through any life insurance company.
There is another question there about whether this applies to international students.
So for an international student, of course, it would be a little bit different in terms of, what you're going to have long term. So if you had money in an account, it's still there and it's still yours. The tax benefits later on in life would be very different. You would be, subject to whatever your home country is going to do. So you'd have to look up a little bit more there. Final question we see here, is there any books or textbooks that I recommend? Those websites are really good on the personal financial planning, but I do have a book I would recommend just to learn, and that's a book called A Random Walk Down Wall Street. It's a book that's been a bestseller now probably 5 decades. A Random Walk Down Wall Street. And it'll tell you a lot more about the sense of how the stock market works, and some things about the investment side of this. Okay, if you're about 20 years from retirement and you can tolerate some risks, is moderate risk a good way to go? Well, I can tell you now that I'm certainly less than 20 years from retirement, and I'm a very aggressive investor. So certainly people that are very young, it's a great time to be in, say, growth stocks or things that are going to vary a good bit more, because the path they're going to vary on is a much steeper path. So yeah, it'll go up and down, but if you're not close to taking anything out, I would not be so worried about it. Once you get within 5 to 10 years of retirement, you may begin to cushion some of that. But me, I'm personally 100% in equities. So I'm not playing it cautiously with that. I have, as I said, certainly enough if the market fell like it did in 2008, that I could work off of other funds until, things bounce back. But I would tend to be much more aggressive, certainly in the early parts of your career, if not the latter parts. Great questions. Thank you.
All right. Are there any more questions? I think we have answered all the questions. Thank you, Dr. Speaker, and thank you, students, for being here. We look forward to seeing you in future events. We will send you this recording and the material that Dr. Speaker shared with me, which I'll send to you along with the recording.